Welcome to the Timeless Science. The brain triggers fear responses to imagined threats using the same biological systems as real danger, even when conscious awareness knows there is no risk. This paradox exposes a fundamental mismatch between rational knowledge and neural control. In this episode, you will hear why the brain treats imagined danger as real, how this system operates beneath awareness, and why evolution preserved it despite its apparent irrationality. Modern intuition assumes that fear should disappear once a threat is identified as unreal. If a sound is recognized as harmless, or a scenario is known to be imaginary, the body should relax. Yet experience contradicts this belief. People feel anxiety during fictional films, racing thoughts before hypothetical events, and physical stress reactions to imagined outcomes. The persistence of fear despite certainty reveals that emotional regulation does not originate where conscious reasoning occurs. The roots of this misunderstanding lie in how the brain prioritizes information. In 1996, Joseph LeDoux at New York University demonstrated through laboratory experiments that threat processing in the amygdala can occur without conscious appraisal. Using auditory conditioning in rodents, LeDoux showed that sensory signals reach the amygdala through a fast neural pathway that bypasses cortical evaluation. The organism reacted before it could analyze. The observation was clear. Speed was favored over accuracy. This architecture remains present in the human brain. The amygdala is not designed to assess truth. It is designed to detect relevance. When a signal resembles danger based on past experience, it initiates a response. The body prepares for action without waiting for confirmation. Conscious awareness arrives later, often as an explanation rather than a controller. The illusion of safety emerges because reasoning and emotional activation occur in parallel, not in sequence. In 2007, Eleanor Maguire at University College London demonstrated that imagined scenes activate the hippocampus in patterns similar to real memory recall. When a person vividly imagines a threatening scenario, the brain constructs it as a coherent scene. To the emotional system, coherence is sufficient. Reality is optional. This explains why reassurance often fails. Knowing that a situation is safe does not deactivate the simulation. The brain continues to generate a scene, and the emotional system responds to that construction. The conscious mind may object, but it does not hold veto power. Control is distributed, not centralized. This illusion is not a flaw. It is a design feature shaped by evolutionary pressure. A system that delays response until certainty is achieved risks fatal error. The cost of reacting to an imagined threat is lower than the cost of ignoring a real one. Fear persists because it is useful, not because it is mistaken. The next chapter will examine how the brain constructs these threatening simulations, and why imagination alone is sufficient to activate the machinery of danger. The process begins with how the brain constructs internal scenes. Danger does not need to be present in the environment to be processed. It only needs to be represented internally with enough coherence. This function is handled primarily by the hippocampus, a structure traditionally associated with memory but now understood as a generative system. In 2007, Eleanor Maguire at University College London demonstrated that the hippocampus is essential for constructing imagined experiences. Using functional magnetic resonance imaging, her team asked participants to imagine detailed scenarios, including neutral and threatening environments. The scans showed strong hippocampal activation during imagination, comparable to that seen during real memory recall. What was measured was not recall accuracy but scene construction. The hippocampus assembled spatial layouts, sequences, and sensory detail into a unified internal experience. This finding reframed imagination as an active biological process. The brain does not label a scene as real or imaginary at the level where construction occurs. It evaluates whether the scene is internally consistent. Once consistency is achieved, the scene becomes usable by other systems. For threat processing, usability is all that matters. Further evidence came from Daniel Schacter at Harvard University in 2012. His work on constructive memory showed that imagined future events are built from recombined elements of past experiences. Functional imaging revealed overlapping activation patterns between remembering and imagining. The hippocampus retrieved fragments, reorganized them, and generated novel scenes. When those scenes contained threat-relevant cues, downstream systems responded accordingly. This explains why imagined danger can feel vivid. The brain does not simulate symbols. It simulates environments. When a threatening scenario is imagined, spatial context, bodily position, and potential outcomes are constructed together. To the nervous system, this is functionally similar to perception. The body reacts to the constructed environment, not to an abstract idea. The speed of this process is critical. Scene construction occurs before conscious evaluation. By the time reasoning attempts to intervene, the simulation is already active. Physiological preparation has begun. This sequence was confirmed in 2010 when researchers at the National Institute of Mental Health measured autonomic responses during guided imagination tasks. Heart rate and skin conductance increased in response to imagined threats, even when participants verbally affirmed that no danger existed. The brain treats imagination as a rehearsal space. Threat simulations allow rapid testing of outcomes without physical risk. The cost is occasional false alarms. The benefit is preparedness. Evolution favored a system that could generate danger internally and respond immediately, rather than one that waited for external confirmation. The next chapter will examine how the amygdala responds to these simulations, and why it does not distinguish between imagined and real danger once a scene is constructed. The moment a simulated threat is constructed, control shifts to the brain's emotional evaluation system. At this stage, the question of reality is no longer relevant. The amygdala responds to patterns, not facts. Its role is to assess biological significance and initiate action, not to verify whether a threat exists in the external world. In 1996, Joseph LeDoux at New York University demonstrated that the amygdala receives sensory information through two parallel pathways. One route passes through cortical regions involved in analysis and conscious interpretation. The other is faster and bypasses detailed evaluation. In laboratory conditions, LeDoux showed that the amygdala could trigger defensive responses before the cortex completed processing. What was observed was a deliberate trade-off. The brain privileged speed over certainty. This architecture explains why imagined threats are effective. Once the hippocampus constructs a coherent scene, it provides enough structure for the amygdala to evaluate relevance. The amygdala does not ask whether the scene is imagined. It asks whether the scene contains cues historically associated with danger. If it does, the response is initiated. Human neuroimaging confirms this mechanism. In 2004, researchers at Stanford University measured amygdala activity while participants imagined emotionally charged scenarios. Functional imaging showed increased amygdala activation during imagined threat conditions, comparable to activation during real emotional stimuli. The measurement was not subjective report. It was blood oxygen level dependent response, a direct indicator of neural engagement. Physiological consequences follow immediately. In 2009, studies conducted at the University of Wisconsin measured heart rate, cortisol release, and skin conductance during guided imagination tasks. Participants were instructed to imagine threatening but clearly fictional scenarios. Despite explicit awareness that nothing was happening, the autonomic nervous system activated. Stress hormones increased. Muscle tension rose. The body prepared for action. The amygdala operates without context. It does not integrate abstract knowledge about safety. Its output is binary. Either a response is required or it is not. Once activated, it signals the hypothalamus and brainstem to mobilize resources. Conscious reasoning has no direct authority to cancel this cascade. At best, it can attempt to regulate downstream effects after activation has begun. This explains why fear feels involuntary. Emotional responses are not failures of logic. They are the result of a system designed to operate independently of conscious deliberation. The amygdala treats internally generated scenes as actionable information because, from an evolutionary perspective, waiting for confirmation is costly. The next chapter will resolve why this system persists, and why evolution favored sensitivity to imagined danger over precise discrimination between real and unreal threats. The system that allows imagined threats to trigger real biological responses persists because it offers a decisive survival advantage. Evolution did not optimize the brain for emotional accuracy. It optimized it for effective action under uncertainty. From this perspective, sensitivity is more valuable than precision. In 2010, Carl Friston at University College London formalized the predictive nature of the brain through the free energy principle. His work showed that the brain continuously generates internal models to anticipate outcomes and minimize surprise. These models are evaluated not by truth but by usefulness. A simulated threat that prompts preparation reduces uncertainty, even if the threat never materializes. The cost of a false alarm is limited. The cost of a missed danger can be fatal. This principle explains why imagined danger is treated as biologically real. Once a threatening scenario is simulated, the brain updates its internal model and prepares the body accordingly. The reaction is not a malfunction. It is a prediction enacted in advance. Fear is the body aligning itself with a possible future before that future arrives. Neuroscientific evidence supports this interpretation. In 2014, researchers at Stanford University demonstrated that imagined future events activate emotional and autonomic systems in patterns similar to real experiences. Activity was measured in the amygdala, insula, and hypothalamus. Heart rate and stress markers followed the simulation, not the environment. The brain responded to possibility, not actuality. This architecture also explains why anxiety is so resistant to rational control. Conscious reasoning operates at a different level of the system. It evaluates narratives and probabilities. The threat response system evaluates patterns and outcomes. When these systems disagree, the older and faster system dominates. Regulation can occur, but only after activation, not before. From an evolutionary standpoint, this arrangement is rational. Organisms that prepared for danger before certainty survived at higher rates than those that waited. The brain learned to treat internally generated simulations as valid signals. Imagination became a rehearsal tool. Fear became an early warning mechanism. The paradox is resolved here. The brain does not confuse imagined threats with real ones. It treats both as inputs to the same predictive machinery. The distinction between real and unreal is irrelevant at the level where survival decisions are made. What matters is whether a scenario could matter. Understanding this reframes fear and anxiety. They are not signs of weakness or error. They are the cost of a system designed to anticipate, simulate, and act ahead of time. The brain responds to imagined danger because imagination itself is a biological function, not a harmless abstraction. Goodbye. Thank you for listening. Perhaps, see you in the next frame of understanding.